Good afternoon, class. You are welcome to today's lecture. Today's we'll be talking about subprogram in PHP. Last time we looked into subprogram in Python. So today's we'll be looking at subprogram in PHP. So I believe you have gotten that of the Python last time. Today we'll be digging deep into that of the PHP. So when we say subprogram in PHP, there are functions. Functions are defined using function keyword. So when we say subprogram in PHP, there are functions. There are functions and we make use of the function keyword. We make use of the function keyword. So subprogram are also primarily defined using function keyword, and the function name can be any string that starts with a letter or underscore followed by 0 or more letters, underscore and digits. So when we see a function in PHP, it always starts with a letter. It can be any string that starts with a letter or underscore followed by 0 or more letters, underscore and digit. And function name are case insensitive. So when we say function name are case insensitive, that is, they can be called, it can be, the function name can be any, it can be lowercase, it can be uppercase, it can be lowercase in between and uppercase in between a word. So let's see this example, like we call this sin, sin function, as sin, sin1, which is lowercase. This one sin, uppercase, sin function inside the bracket 1, which is uppercase, the other one sin1 lowercase, and the sin, this one is in between. It can be, it is that word sin, sin, it's uppercase and lowercase, so and so on like that. So the function name can be case insensitive because all these names refer to the same function. So all these example of sin, they refer to, they can still call it the same function. So by convention, built-in PHP function are called with all lowercase. Let's see the example of what we are talking about. Like we start PHP function starts with a function keyword. Like that of the Python, starts with def keyword. So but this PHP only starts with function keyword. So function find average. So open the parenthesis and we have the inside the code, the block code. So we have like the variable. Our variable must start with the $sign average equal to 0, echo, that is the output, average is $sign average. So it prints out the average, the $sign average. So sometimes a function may be need to accept particular parameter, and like let's see the parameter that a function need to accept. Like we have this function here, the same code, function find average, $sign number 1, the first parameter, and the second parameter $sign num2. So open the bracket, we have the average, the $sign average equal to the first parameter sum up the second parameter, which is the num1 plus num2 divided by 2. So we return the average, the $sign average. So that is how we can the function parameter in PHP. So the value you pass it to a function. So when you pass it to a function, it return the value, the average. So we have several kind of parameters. So we'll be looking at several kind of parameter. Here we have the default parameter. The default parameter here specify a default parameter as you are assign the parameter value in the function declaration, and the value assigned, the value you assign, that parameter value you assign to a parameter as a default value cannot be a complex expression. It can only be a scalar value. So let's see the example of a default parameter similar to that of the Python default parameter in Python programming language. We have here, starting with our PHP sign, we have the function keyword, the same code here that we used before, find average, and we have the first parameter num1, $sign num1, $sign2, and $sign3. Like this default parameter means that if we don't give a value, PHP use a default one. If you don't have a value to give, the PHP can use a default one. So that is what the default parameter rule in PHP is. So we have this value like the $3 assigned to be 7. So we have a value for this parameter, this last parameter given here in this code to be 7, $3 to be 7. So the average, $sign average equal to, inside the bracket, we divide the 3, we add up the 3 parameter, that is the num1, num2, $sign num1 plus $sign num2 plus $sign num3. We divide inside the bracket, we divide it by the 3 because we in this code we have only 3 parameters. So divided by 3. So we return, after the computing of the average, we return the $sign average. So that is the default parameter. We are given a value. A value is assigned to the third parameter, which is num3 to be 7. So, and that is the default value here in this code. So to another one, we have a function. A function may have any number of parameters with default value, which we can see in the last example I explained. However, they must be listed after all parameters that do not have default value. So you list all the parameters. The one that have default value, you list it with the one that do not have, with the parameter that do not have default value. So it will be listed like that. That is how a function is being written in PHP. So variable parameter. A variable parameter, that is another part of parameter we'll be looking at. A variable parameter is a function, and that function may require a variable number of arguments. To declare a function with a variable number of arguments, leave out the parameter block entirely. So a variable parameter in PHP allows a function to accept any number of arguments. The argument can be any number, even if you didn't define them by name. So you can accept any number, even if you don't define that number by name. So let's see the example of this example code here with the variable parameter that we are discussing. So we have, starting with the PHP function find average, and we open the parentheses here. If function underscore num underscore args, if inside the bracket function underscore num underscore args function equal to 0, open the parenthesis, return is 0, meaning that if no arguments are passed, return is 0. That means we did not pass any argument here, so we return is 0. So we close that block, that statement of that block. So else, otherwise, open a parenthesis, a block code, we sum up, sign sum equal to 0, initializing our sum, $sign sum to be 0. For, that is looping, we want to loop for open a bracket, $i equal to 0, we initialize our I to be 0. $i less than this kind of portion here, this fun underscore num underscore args portion, it tells us how many input the function received. That is what it tells us. And it like this function now, this what it indicates here, if function underscore num underscore args equal to 0, meaning that count how many arguments were passed. So we are to count how many arguments were passed, and here if no arguments are passed, we return 0. That is what it means. This function, like this is a PHP function, it's a built-in function. This fun function underscore num underscore args is a function, is a built-in function in PHP, and PHP allow this built-in function to count how many arguments were passed. So, and here, because there is no argument are passed, it will return 0. So we close the parenthesis. So else, otherwise we sum up, we start adding with the sum dollar, we initialize the sum dollar to be 0, equal to 0. For looping, so we loop si, we initialize si to be equal to 0, si less than the function underscore num underscore arg function, semicolon, $i increment plus increment of I that you have initialized to be $i equal to 0 increment. So you open the parenthesis, so $sum plus increment of sum, $ sum increment equal to the function for underscore get underscore arg si. The si you initialize with the increment under the looping statement form. So that means we add, so with this increment of sum, $ sum, we add each of the arguments. So we'll be adding each of the arguments that are passed. So we'll be adding each of it. That is why we have the sum plus $sum plus the increment of $ sum. So, and here we close the parenthesis. So the $ average equal to the $ sum plus divided by the function num, that I mean the argument, the counting argument that we pass equal to the function, $ sum divided by function underscore num underscore args function. So here we calculate the average here. We calculate the average under the $ average, and after calculating the average, by the time we supply the value, so and we pass and there is a argument, we add each of the arguments here under the sum, $ sum plus, so we return the average. So average is being returned. After calculating the average, we return the average $ average. So I believe we can get this one. So what the function, this code function is talking about, what the function does is that if it doesn't take any name parameter, that is the empty, that function empty parameter, but you can still pass in any number of value can pass in, so that we can get the output for the average, and that of the get the output of the average. So and we have, so here in this place we check if no arguments were passed. That is why we return 0. So we check, and if no argument are passed, we return 0. So if argument exists, for instance like this for the for loop that we use, if that is argument is passed, so if argument exists in this place, this for that we use, so we loop through all using for. That is why we make use of for. We loop through using for. So and later we add them up using function underscore num underscore arg, and inside the bracket we have the dollar sign I. So and we divide the total by the number of arguments. We divide that total by the number of arguments to find the average. So that is what the code example is talking about. So PHP provides 3 functions that we have used in the last code example. So it provides 3 functions, and we can use in the function to retrieve the parameter passed to it. So we have the first function, we have function underscore get underscore args function that return an array of all parameters provided to the function. And another function that PHP provides is function underscore num underscore args function that return the number of parameters provided to the function. So the third function PHP provided is function underscore get underscore args function. It returns a specific argument from the parameter. So let's example of those functions, of the 3 functions that PHP provides. We have the dollar sign array equal to function underscore get underscore args function. So we have the dollar sign count. That one count, it counts how many arguments were passed, and the first one dollar sign array, that of the array, it get the value of a specific index or specific value. So that of the dollar sign count equal to function dollar sign num function underscore num underscore args. So that of the value dollar sign value equal to function underscore get underscore agr, that is argument underscore number. So it get the value of a specific index. That is, that function underscore get underscore ags get the specific input at any position. It will have a particular position or argument number. So another parameter we'll be looking at is missing parameters. Missing parameter in PHP allow the passing of any number of argument to the function. So it missing parameter allow the passing of any number of argument to the function, and any parameter the function expects that are not passed to it remain unset, and a warning is issued for each is by value. So the next one is by reference, passing parameter by reference. This gives a function direct access to a variable, and to be passed by reference, the argument must be a variable. So the argument, when you are passing by reference, the arguments must be a variable. You must indicate that a particular argument of a function will be passed by reference by preceding the variable name in the parameter list with an ampersand sign. So we can see it look like add, and it look like and, that is the sign ampersand. So that is the sign. So when we are passing by reference by preceding the variable name in the variable list, we make use with an ampersand sign. So let's see the example of passing parameter by reference with an ampersand sign. So we are starting with the same example code. function find average, we can see the upper sign comes before the parameter, comes before the first parameter, which is upper sign, the upper sign $1, upper sign $2. That means we are passing by reference. So which the argument must be a variable, and you must indicate that a particular argument of a function be passed by reference preceding the variable, and the parameter must always come, the upper sign must always come first before the variable name. So, and we find the average, the dollar sign average equal to the sum of the two parameters divided by 2 with the, so, and when you are finding the average, the upper sign will not be part of it again. But during the function, when you are bypassing reference, give a function direct access to a variable. During the function, that it will give direct access to a variable that will make use of the parameter upper sign. So we find the average and we return the average, the dollar sign average. So because the function dollar sign value parameter is passed by reference, the actual value of the first parameter and the second parameter, num1 and num2, rather than a copy of that value, is multiplied by the function. By default, value are copied out of the function. To return a value by reference, both declare the function with an upper sign before its name, and when assigning the return value to a variable, we can see in the example code that I just finished explaining under passing parameter by. So, and we have another example here. We have the PHP function, and that of the upper sign is value by reference is being assigned during the function at the functions under the function name. It's assigned before, after function, before the find average, and with the parameter values, and with the calculating the average and returning average. Here in this code, the function return an alias for dollar sign average instead of a copy of its value. So it return an alias for dollar sign average instead of the copy of its value, and this technique is sometimes used to return large string or array value efficiently from a function. So we look at how function returns some value. To return a value from a function, we use the return statement, and when a return statement is encountered during execution, control revert to the calling statement, and the evaluated result will be returned as the value of the function. So a function can have several return statements. So let's see the example of a return which we have been treating, which we have been using it from the example code, previous code. We have been explaining how to use a return statement. So we define average, assigning average equal to 0, return average. So PHP function can return only a single value, like we have in this example above here, average equal to 0. So it can return only a single value with the return keyword. So to return multiple value, return an array, and if no return value is provided by a function, the function return a new empty. So we look at anonymous function. So anonymous function in PHP use some PHP function use a function you provide them with to do part of their work. For example, the USOT function uses a function you create and pass it to it as a parameter to determine the sort order of the item in an array. So let's just say what an anonymous function is. A function without a name. In PHP, anonymous function is a function without a name. You can assign it to a variable, you can pass it directly to another function, like we have this function USORT function. You can pass it directly to another function like the USORT function. It is often used when the function is only needed temporarily, like a one-time helper. So that is what the summary of anomalous function. So we can as well pass it to another function like USOF function. So PHP allows the definition of localized and temporary function. So and such functions are called anomalous function or closure. So it is defined using the normal function definition syntax, but assign it to a variable or pass it directly. So you can pass it directly to another function like USORT, and you can assign it to a variable. So let's see the example of anomalous function under this example code with the same find average function, find average. So like this code is not, if you run it, there is an error, maybe the syntax is on, it can't run it very well. So and like now you can pass an anomalous function as a parameter in a valid and meaningful way. So like this code now, we have a function, we have like 4 parameters here, $$1, $2, $3, and we have the function, maybe like an operation sign. So like here, find function, find average, we are calling the anomalous function, and that anomalous function is passed as an function here. That is, they're supposed not to use as function, maybe like a, because if we run this code to give us a syntax error. So it's supposed to be a, maybe like a dollar sign, maybe like another operation to be another function. So to call the anomalous function pass as a maybe dollar sign as operation or any function apart from like this, apart from using this one. So we have the dollar sign sum to sum up all the parameter here using the dollar sign operation. So we have the average, the computing the average, dollar sign average, by summing up divided by 3, so it return the average. So here is the lecture for today under subprogram in PHP. I believe you are clear with it on PHP. So next one we'll be looking at another topic again. So